and welcome to the Ventures On-Site webinar, where today we take a very close look at the construction activity and the future of construction activity here in the UAE. We thank you so much that you can join us today, and we look forward to hearing what our fantastic panel has to say about this very, very interesting topic. Well, there's no doubt that this time we are living in is a very uncertain time. The worldwide pandemic and the fear associated to the possibility of increased disease spread has caused major economic concerns on a global scale. I guess the greater concern is that this economic downturn is globally affecting many industries and not just the construction and real estate activity. Well, you can't dispute the statement that says we are living in uncertain times, because what we face today is unprecedented, at least in my lifetime. The closest I've come to such a market downturn is when I moved to the Middle East in 2008, just in time for the worldwide economic crisis. And this was my first experience in here, and as we experienced that crisis from 2009 and onwards. For us back then, it was an uncertain time, and to the consequences that the economic crisis would bring to the region's construction activity. Well, fortunately, at that time, I had a mentor. His name was Don Pettis, and for many years earlier, he was often heard saying the phrase, "Plan for the worst and hope for the best." It was a message that gave thought and encouragement to the reading of the future market conditions, no matter how good or bad they were, to ensure that planning was in place to accommodate business change. He called it reading the tea leaves, because the future was never something that was really known, or the future was a time of uncertainty. Well, in certain times, no one is really spared of the responsibility of critical market decision making. And if anything, the time frame for making those decisions in a crisis time like we have now is very shortened. The first response recognizes the depth of the complexity of the certain situation, and there are certain leaders that just become paralyzed by the associated circumstances. But the alternative response is a leader of an organization who can lead that organization through the difficult time with a determination to make the necessary changes, with a leadership style that continues to build and strengthen and diversify, a leader who has the ability to encourage and lead the organization in a manner that accommodates the changed business circumstances. It's this type of leader that understands the need for decisive and immediate action. Well, in order for us to make the right decisions in business, we need to understand the true market conditions, both now and what is expected in the future. We recognize this as a time of uncertainty, but what is the current market situation for the UAE, for the construction and real estate industry? Well, in today's webinar, we have a special extended version. Normally, we keep our webinars to around 1 hour, but today we don't mind moving beyond to maybe an hour and a half, because we have a very large panel of fantastic business leaders, and all of the people represented in our panel today are professionals in their own right, and they represent a very broad cross-section of the construction and real estate industry here in the UAE. So we're going to hear their view on the current market, UAE conditions, and what could be in store for 2021. Well, I just want to say a special thanks to Janavco. Janavco is a 50-year-old UAE-based company, a major representative of some fantastic construction equipment. I think you saw the preview earlier as you were waiting for this webinar to start. But we thank you, Janavco, for your support in today's webinar. Well, I would like to introduce our panel today. Like I said, they are all excellent leaders of industry, and we really appreciate their support today. We have Atif Rahman, the director and partner of Danube Properties, Camille Gantus, the area manager for Batco Group, Carloa Al-Hashimi, the projects director of Sharuk, Mr. Jason Langer, the director of Robert Bird. We have Kieran Chahan, the chair of RICS and UAE board partner for Heifer Associates. Mr. Scott Coombs, the managing partner for AESG, who is joining us from London. Thanks, Scott, for taking your time. Dr. Sabah is very much involved in the Hyperloop development. So we look forward to hearing from Dr. Sabah, and he has some very interesting perspective on PPP projects. So we'll hear from him soon. Mr. Kareem Farha, the CEO of engineering contracting company, ECC, very prominent contractor in the region who is progressing very strongly through this time of crisis. And Mr. Asif Shafi from ACOM. And we welcome all of you to our panel today. We appreciate your support and commitment to ensuring that everyone here in the UAE moves forward with good progression as we try to understand more about the construction and real estate sector here in the UAE. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And we have a lot to get through in such a short period of time. And what I'd like to do is just to go around the room and ask one of you an interesting question that I know is associated to your expertise. And then following this, we have a whole series of interesting questions from that have already been submitted from those that are attending our webinar today. And what I would like to ask is that if those attending the webinar could send in some questions as we progress. If there is a subject that is discussed by any particular panel member and you have a question about that, then please just use the question and answer sector there on the Zoom platform and send us your questions so that we can get some feedback from this. We want to open up the panel to have some very interesting discussions as we move forward. So Mr. Jason Langer, thank you for joining us. Jason, you're the managing director for Robert Bird, and I understand you get very much involved with some very unique projects in the region. But before we specifically look at the UAE, I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of an understanding to the internationality of your company, where you're based throughout the regions. And if you could give us a bit of a brief on what you're seeing throughout the Australasia, European marketplaces with regard to the construction activity today. And how does this compare with what you're also seeing in the GCC region?
Thanks, Philip. That is a great question to start with because we are in pretty globally unprecedented times at the moment. To give everyone a bit of background, Robert Bird Group, can you all hear me? Sorry, I just want to double check. Yep,
yes,
excellent.
You're good. Keep going.
So Robert Bird Group, a global engineering consultancy. So we've got offices across Australia, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and the UK. And we're seeing, I guess, a generally consistent trend of the volume of new projects coming through everywhere in the world is gradually slowing. That said, the trends are not necessarily what we expected. As the COVID pandemic has hit in 2020, we were very concerned, for example, that remote working may become a massively adopted trend worldwide, and therefore we wouldn't see any commercial office building projects proceed around the globe because demand would drop. And yet it's been the opposite. We've actually seen commercial building projects proceeding around the world because there is an expectation that post-pandemic, when people work out what their office of the future is going to be, there's going to be a flight to quality office buildings and quality office space that can be designed to suit the new needs of the modern workforce. And so we're actually seeing developers who believe their product is going to be premium grade, continuing to push the go button on their projects. We're also seeing infrastructure projects continue to happen on the basis that whilst this pandemic may have significant impacts on the world in the short to medium term, the sort of the 1 to 3 year range, that infrastructure projects that are meant to serve the community for 10, 20, 30, 50 years and beyond are still required, will still be successful, and therefore both governments and private industry are still putting emphasis and finance behind those big projects. So whilst there's a global trend to a lower volume of projects everywhere, and that's the case in the Middle East as well as globally, we are actually seeing some particular sectors still staying strong.
Very good. Kareem, your company is a very strong company. I understand that you've been here for more than 45 years in operation here in the UAE. And that said, this has been a very significant change during this time for your company. But how has this affected your growth in the UAE? It's easy to look at this year and to think that the future will be all doom and gloom. But what are you seeing as the outlook for 2021 and 2022?
Well, Phil, yeah, there's no doubt that this has been one of the hardest years I've ever experienced in my career at ECC Group. Again, just to give you a background about the group, we have construction company, we have an MEP company, United Masters, there's Prime Metal, the metal and aluminium. We also have Abanos, the joinery, and we also have a small development company called Aurora. So I can tell you from the perspective of all of those companies. Yeah, like I said, it's definitely been the hardest year that I've ever experienced in my career. As everyone said, these are unprecedented times. You know, we've got a pandemic that we haven't seen in over 100 years. Unfortunately, many companies have closed down and will continue to close down without a strong financial backing to support them. However, I don't think the future will be all doom and gloom. These downturns and tough times are essential for growth. They're essential for improvement and education for countries, for businesses, and for people. These times will force businesses to focus internally and adapt to improve and become more lean, more efficient in order to survive with the tighter budgets that we're faced with. It forces everybody to think efficiently and look at ways to improve existing and everyday methods of working. Construction companies will start to shift probably to more modular construction methods. BIM will be more commonly used in projects. I think there'll be more design and build projects coming through, and there'll be a shift towards using more advanced technologies. I mean, already we've seen from COVID-19, it's rapidly changed the way that we communicate and do business through softwares like Microsoft Teams and through Zoom. I mean, these technologies have actually been around for a while, but we needed this pandemic to push us into using them and making more efficient use of our time. I'm also a big believer in this country, and I'm sure we will come through this downturn to thrive and develop even more. I mean, I was born here, and I've been very fortunate to see possibly one of the fastest developing countries in the world. And in my lifetime in this country, we've had at least 5 economic crises, and we've survived all of them. So, you know, we're very fortunate to have great leaders who put a lot of effort into making their country one of the best in the world. And, you know, we already have an incredible infrastructure. I mean, I was out on the roads the other day. I was driving out to Al Qudra with my wife, and I was just thinking, my God, these roads are insane. You know, there's not one bump in the road. Our harbors are some of the best in the world. Our power, you never get any power cuts here. Our airport is one of the best in the world. And on top of all of that, you know, we're living in one of the safest countries in the world. I still have a lot of friends who have left and who, you know, they've gone to places like, you know, in America, in Europe, and they still tell me how, you know, they just felt so safe here. They were able to leave their doors open. They were able to leave their kids running around, whereas now they don't feel as safe. The country's also investing into space exploration, bringing tech companies to set up their businesses here, creating a medical tourism, and I'm sure there'll be many, many more innovative ideas to stimulate the economy. They've now pushed the Expo to next year, which I'm sure will create a positive influx in the UAE economy with tourism and visitors and the global population flocking towards Dubai. I'm hopeful that the oil prices will also increase, which will help to boost the cash flow. And I actually read a stat in the IMS report that the UAE economy has contracted by 3.5% in 2020. However, they're anticipating that it will rebound and grow to 3.3% in 2021. So that's very promising. I mean, within our group of company, within ECC Group, we are seeing tenders come through. And we're very fortunate to have repeat business with our clients. As you said, Phil, we've been around for 45 years. So our key clients and the developers who have been here for a very long time, they know us and they're continuing to come back to us. I mean, even if you look at our development company, Aurora, we've just finished our development in JVC called Hayati Avenue, and it's pretty much already almost all sold out. And the townhouses that were sold out extremely quickly. And we're actually having more people coming and asking us if there are any townhouses available. So we're actually thinking about looking into building more townhouses on a smaller plot. I mean, the pandemic has definitely pushed people to looking into more, I think, separated villas with their own pools. During a lockdown, at least you have your own space and your own pool. So to summarize, I believe that we will remain in tough times for now and the beginning of 2021, and more companies will struggle. However, I'm hopeful that by the end of 2021, the economy will start moving again and will lead us into an even better 2022.
I guess the question is, Karim, and as we move forward in this discussion, we understand that 2021 will be activity, but will there be enough activity to support the infrastructure of business that is already existing? The number of construction companies, the number of suppliers to the construction space. I understand that it's clear from what you're saying there will be continued opportunity next year, but will there be enough opportunity? That's what we're trying to get to. So I appreciate your comments on that. We'll get back to that as we progress during the webinar, but thank you so much for that great report. And we're glad to hear that your business is moving forward in such strength. Dr. Saba, nice for you to join us. I understand that you have a great history in the Hyperloop. I'd like to hear a bit of a brief about that project. I'm sure many joining us would like to hear. There's a lot of hype about the Hyperloop several months ago that just went a bit quiet when we hit COVID-19. But I was wondering also if you could just give us a brief overview of what you think the future will look like for infrastructure activity and development in the UAE.
Thank you very much, Phil, and I'm pleased to be part of such distinguished panel. In order to see the future, we have to go back in the past. And I think if you look at this country, its history it's only 49 years. And what's this country done in 49 years, there are countries couldn't do in hundreds of years. The UAE considered as first economy global, regionally, and 25th globally. The UAE has the most resilient economy in the region and in the world. And it's leading the world in landmark projects. And I start the first landmark project here in UAE is the Burj Al Arab Dubai Metro, the longest driveless project metro in the world. Burj Khalifa, the tallest building, and the Expo. The Expo is unique. No one done Expo before. Also, the UAE looked at strategically to diversify its economy away from dependency on the oil. This is give the economy more resilience. Also, it's tried to ensure high quality of infrastructure and environmentally friendly and sustainable development, because this is the future. We have to look after the next generation. For innovation, we know the UAE, it's a world leader in innovation and the first Arab country to send mission to Mars. And just recently, and I think yesterday, it's been announced by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, we're going to the moon. And we're going to be the first Arab country to go to the moon. That's the potential. Also, for the future, there are a lot of projects. It's either, in the planning process, there are projects which I was involved, like in Abu Dhabi, the Metro, LRT, high-speed rail, and so on. So these are projects for the future. in Dubai, you have the Dubai Creek Tower and Jewel of the Creek. These are all projects for the future. In Abu Dhabi, another project is the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Zayed Museum, and Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park. These projects demonstrate the UAE diversity in project and in economic. And we should not forget all these projects are going to need people to operate and maintain. And therefore, yes, we're going to build these projects, but we still to maintain it, to operate it. And you need staff, people to operate these projects. On the resilience, I remember I came in this country in 2007. A year later, I thought I'm going back home. 2008, everyone thought UAE, it's going down, no way to come back. Look what happened. We came back stronger, and the landmark project we built, it's much bigger than what we built before 2007. And therefore, the future is bright. The future for the infrastructure project and the diversity of projects in this part of the world. And as my fellow panelists said, this is one of the safest countries in the world. And we are privileged and proud to be part of building this country.
Thank you, Dr. Sabah. I understand that there's a lot of reference given in parallel to the time that we're seeing now and 2011. Yes? Very interesting time from 2009 to 2011, the worldwide economic crisis. And yet that crisis only affected the construction industry or the real estate sector in this region. I understand that, 6 to 7% of the GDP is relevant to the construction sector in this region, which is very high. And yet the COVID-19 pandemic that we've seen has affected economics in all industry sectors. And so how is this really going to affect it moving forward? It's easy to say we're going to continue to build, but are we going to see, guys, the continuing building of hotels? Maybe not. Are we going to see the continuation of investors wanting to invest their money in continual project activity? Maybe, maybe not. These are some of the questions that we look to get to the bottom to today, because it's very easy to be very open and positive, and yes, that's our job. But if we're going to plan for the worst and hope for the best, we've got to identify what that market's going to look like next year. And if we've had a whole period of time where we haven't had new projects going to the architect's office, where they've only been working on projects that they've been working on before COVID-19, and we have contractors like Kareem that have been only working on construction projects that they have in hand and haven't won projects for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months, at some point in time in 2021 or 22, there's going to be a hole. And what we're trying to understand is, where is there going to be some concerns? And associated to this, we see a lot of change within the construction sector. I'd like to go over to Kieran for a comment, because I'd like to ask Kieran, what are some of the aspects of construction industry that will change in 2021? Yes, we're looking at technology, and yes, there's been positive opportunity for continued development, but as a consequence of the last 6 months and the next few months, what are some of the changes that you think we might see in the construction space?
Thanks, Philip. Just to introduce myself, my name's Kieran. I'm got 2 hats on today. One, I'm the chair of the RICS UAE National Board, which is the RICS is a professional institution that sets the qualification and standards in the land, property, and infrastructure and construction sectors. So that's a global membership spanning circa about 140,000. And also, I'm a partner at Heifer Associates. Again, that's a construction and claims dispute resolution consultancy, which has been operational in the Middle East for the past 30 years. So thanks for your question, Philip. I just want to address it under 3 main headings, really, in terms of what will change next year, because obviously there will be change, and we're seeing change now currently in the market and the way we're operating. So from a construction claims perspective, normally what we've found and what we have found is, during an economic downturn, the construction claims generally increase, And COVID and the coronavirus pandemic is no different to what we faced, let's say, post-recession. So pre-recession, generally, there's a lot of liquidity in the market. There's lots of money coming into the economy, and also the money exchanges quite easily to the supply chain and so on and so forth. What happens in this pandemic time is there isn't much liquidity in the market, so it's having an effect on the supply chain. There's no money coming in, and likewise, we can't filter that down to the supply chain, subcontractors, etc. So let's fast forward to 2021. We're going to see, it's undoubtable that we're going to see an increase in claims in the industry, especially those related to Corona. The stakeholders that are currently being affected, whether that might be by financial or time. A lot of the projects that I'm working on now have been affected by the coronavirus in some way or in some way. So a lot of disruption, got projects that we couldn't get materials from the Far East or even from Turkey. So again, causing delay and disruption on our projects. So all of that, which will be felt in 2021 when project completion dates are missed. There's another aspect in terms of digitization and reliance on technology, and that's another aspect that's going to change. As Kareem, I think it was Kareem that mentioned, in terms of us utilizing infrastructure that we already had in place, such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams for video conferencing. We're going to see more heavy reliance on that, and that's going to change our way of working, smarter ways of working, probably spending less time traveling, better environmental impact. You're traveling less, you've got more time to give to your client, etc. And the other thing, Philip, in terms of void period, so yeah, that's a very, 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 very good question. And from my perspective, I feel that there is a potential that there could be a void period in 2021. It's inevitable. If we're not getting new projects in now, we're just working on existing projects at the moment, closing out existing projects next year. What's going to happen? We're going to need new projects to work on after we're closing out the existing ones. So we look to the UAE government to see what they're going to do to try and stimulate that. Are there any stimulus packages being implemented? So we know Abu Dhabi are hiking up their infrastructure spend. So in recession times, generally a lot of the money gets spent via infrastructure, and that kind of drives the economy. Also, I think I'm quite fortunate because Expo has been pushed to 2021. There's going to be a lot of even closing out the existing Expo project, but also on the back of Expo, there's going to be a lot more projects as well. So, and especially because there's going to be it's going to be a global tourism hub, getting people from around the world to one single destination. The contacts that I'm from the RICS perspective, I spoke to contacts within the industry. So that's kind of from a claims perspective, but from a contracting perspective, I'm getting mixed reviews for about next year. I'm getting existing contractors who have a good infrastructure, good backing, financial backing here in the Middle East. They are tendering for new projects now, and they are getting the same kind of level of inquiries because, again, it's repeat business. Clients still want to get their developments in the ground and up. And it's kind of a good time to get it in the ground and get it going. Also, I'm getting the other perspective as well, where some contracting companies are finding it very difficult to sustain themselves, so they've had to close down. But there's a positive to that as well. The contracting organisations have got less competition on the back of that because there isn't as many tenderers going for the same project. To avoid so I think it's important that we just need to change the way we work. We incorporate smart ways of working to try and avoid that void period. Also, you can change from a consultancy perspective, change the way that you usually traditionally you might price your projects based on lump sum projects. But again, you need to start thinking outside of the box. I know consultants out there that are pricing it on a minimum fee and a percentage based on the project or percentage based on the overall claim at the end, if it's won, if it goes to arbitration or the courts. So I think that kind of summarizes it from my perspective.
Just one quick question for a very quick answer. What percentage of your business, Kareem, is UAE project activity, and what percentage is outside of the UAE?
Currently, 100% of our projects are in the UAE at the present, but in the past, we've kind of split it between the other regions. So we've done a lot of work in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, as well as UAE.
You're not expecting that to change next year?
To be honest, ever since the Qatar embargo and everything that happened, the kind of projects that we used to get from there have been on hold. So I don't expect anything to change from last year to this year. Definitely from Saudi Arabia. I'm expecting I've got a contact in Saudi Arabia who I keep in contact with, and the infrastructure spend and the major projects that the government have invested, definitely going to see a major increase in Saudi Arabia and the projects that are.
Yes, very good. Thank you very much. On that same point, I'd like to swing over to Scott Coombs, the managing partner of AESG. Now, AESG is a UAE-based company, but they have offices now in London and other areas of the world. I'll let Scott explain that briefly. But Scott, from our previous discussions, you sound very optimistic for the future. Okay, so I understand that. But AESGC has secured healthy projects in the past couple of months. I look forward to hearing a bit about that. But one or two of these projects have been record value projects for your company. But I'm sure that there are some concerns for 2021. And how do you see the future for your business activity in the UAE compared with other regions of the world? And what are the steps that you're taking to survive? Could you bring some update on that for us, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, I hope the connection's all right. Obviously, I'm a bit further away.
You are looking good, sounding great.
Okay, perfect, great. Yeah, I guess by way of a very quick introduction, yes, AESG is a Dubai founded firm. I suppose similar to what Kareem mentioned, I've been in Dubai since I was 4 years old. It's very much my home. And about 10 years ago, myself and Saeed Alabar founded AESG. Really what we are is we're a specialist engineering firm. We focus on providing specialist engineering to the built environment. We do now have offices in London, an office in Riyadh. We've had an Abu Dhabi office for a number of years, and we are now looking further afield. And so at the start of 2021, we'll be opening an Asia office in Singapore. In terms of sort of your question about sort of what we're doing and sort of recent sort of things that I suppose that have happened for the business. Yeah, I mean, actually 2020 has actually been a very interesting year for us. It's been a very tough year, as I think a number of people have said. But it's also been a year of huge transformation for us and huge growth as a business. So in August, we secured one of our largest ever contracts, a new project. And we followed on with that with another very large award in September. They are, so obviously my outlook actually, and this year so far, we're quite confident, and it's been quite bullish, and our outlook's quite bullish for, I suppose, for engineering services. On the flip side of that, I am, I suppose, quite skeptical of I suppose, construction in the UAE, or in particular in Dubai. And I think that's perhaps where we have a few more concerns. So when I talk about these awards that happened and sort of the record awards, most of that has been in Saudi Arabia. We started this year with a 2020 business plan where no more than 37% of our business was going to be actually in Saudi Arabia. And actually we're seeing that now well over 50% and probably going beyond that. But I think probably to maybe echo some of the points that others have said, it is a time for huge transformation. And I think that needs to happen through things like digitization of our businesses by looking at different services. And I think we all need to be fighting at the moment. And I think that fighting needs to happen quite quickly. I don't think we can sit around looking at our toes and wait to see what happens. I think the changes need to happen now. And I think as a business, that is one thing we've been very good at doing very quickly. We are quite fortunate. I don't mean any offense by this, but we are quite fortunate to have quite a young and dynamic leadership team. And across the board there, we've been able to enact changes within the business very quickly. So we are now looking at things like acquisition of a small firm that will help support digital innovation within the construction sector. We've invested into parametric design with the services that we're doing. And we are looking at other geographic expansion. So really the trick to us seems to be utilizing this crisis to diversify our business. And that's diversifying services and also diversifying the geographies where we operate. And that's really the approach that we're taking to grow. So with that in mind, we also have a huge amount of recruitment going on at the moment. We have around about 8 senior positions, which we're currently recruiting for. I think 2 of those have just recently been filled. But yeah, certainly we're optimistic for the outlook.
I understand you just picked up a superstar in the facade industry. I saw some notice there on LinkedIn. So sounds like you're moving forward very, very positively. So what sort of people are you looking for to join your company? Architects, engineers?
Yeah, so we're actually
do you need CVs or? We have a very big audience today. I'm sure there's somebody there that's looking for a job.
So in particular, what we're looking for is global leaders. So we revised our business plan about halfway through the year. And really the whole focus now is for us to build a global business. Now, as I said at the beginning, I'm very, very passionate. I'm very committed to Dubai. And I think the opportunity lies in Dubai being the hub for where we will operate. I think Dubai will remain a great place to outsource services. If you're an engineering provider, if you're in fabrication, if you're providing something that can be exported, I think, Dubai is a great place to work. It's still very, it's becoming more and more cost effective. There's still no corporation tax. I'm very happy living there. I'm a very happy and proud Dubai resident, and I think things will remain that way. But I am cautious about the amount of construction that I anticipate will go on, in particular in Dubai. But the sort of roles that we're looking for are global leads. So sort of a global lead for our facade sector, global leads within things like fire and life safety. We have already global leads in place for environmental services, sustainability services. But yeah, so generally it's sort of engineering, very senior engineering roles in particular.
So what are some of the changes that you think you might see in the future for project design? You're saying that you're concerned, and that's because I believe that there will be less projects. Less projects increases competition, and increased competition drives price downward. I've said this for a long time. That's one of my reads for the future, because I've experienced this many times throughout previous market downturns. But in a market, in an economic shift like we've seen, what are some of the changes that you might predict to be the norm or the adopted norm in project design?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think the real big one, and this was touched on earlier, was sort of things like modular construction. But I also think that digitization within the design process is a huge one. At the moment, I think design and construction is fraught with inefficiency. And I think that's where there's a major, major opportunity for transformation. In particular, if you take sort of the design process at the moment, we typically go out, we have a new plot of land, we look to design whether it's hotel, sort of commercial space, residential space in there, and kind of start with a blank sheet of paper. That needs to change and that needs to adapt. We're still very much designing and building buildings the same way we did 100 years ago. Even with things like CAD and then BIM, we're now just producing more documentation, but not becoming more efficient with the way we actually design and construct. And so the big changes I see here is a lot more repetition through design, with companies like Google and Amazon investing more and more into real estate. We've actually recently as well started investing more into data centers, and we're going to be doing more work in that space. And that's somewhere where we're seeing these sort of tech giants really revolutionize their approach to construction through repetition, through things like parametric tools to rationalize designs, minimize waste, to be able to reuse a design but repurpose it somehow to actually create more buildings, but not having to go back to the drawing boards and square one every single time that you do it. That's somewhere where we see a lot of potential.
Well, there's an authority that is in the UAE, and we are very pleased to have Kawala Al-Hashimi join us today. She is the project director of Shuruk. And as we talk about this area of sustainability and design change, I'm very much aware that Shuruk are doing some very interesting things in the region. And I'd like to ask Khalawa to join us. Khalawa, COVID-19 has changed so much for us. And how has this time affected the Shuruk plans for the future? Have you held back on any project developments or changed any expectations for 2021? As a government developer, what's in store for the future? What's your explanation here?
Thank you, Philip. Firstly, thank you for having me and thank you for the introduction. I feel like for us in Shuruq, we're not the typical developer, whereas we don't really develop sort of the status quo kind of projects. So it's not like we look at the market, oh, the market needs more residential, let's build residential. And I think that is one of the reasons why COVID, I would say, has not affected us as much. We've always been sort of finding our niche and then just going for it. And had we really followed the market, I don't think we would have been very successful, especially now. A lot of our projects, actually the open projects, the destinations that are actually out there open for public, have flourished during COVID, whereas many projects have not. So there must have been something that we've done right. And I think the questioning of the status quo and sort of just saying, what are we doing different? Is this innovative enough? Are we pushing boundaries? How much value are we adding to the community when we come to develop something? So it's not just the feasibility, the financial feasibility of a project that goes into play, but a lot more layers into that, I think, when we come to develop. And I think that is mainly why I wouldn't say that a lot has changed because of COVID. So the projects that we had in 2020 in the pipeline, or let's say that we are planning for 2021, have not changed in number. They might have gotten slightly shifted in reprioritizing. We actually, I would say, got more excited for new projects in 2021 than we did in 2020. Just because we saw a lot of more opportunity, I think, and a lot of more chances to do things differently and to push more boundaries. It excited us a lot. It was a very exciting time for us, honestly. Yes, there was the depression part of it, I think, as all other companies have experienced. But I think the one important thing that I think everyone should get out of COVID is that COVID really should be a wake-up call for us. A wake-up call in terms of just how we've been doing things is not sustainable. You know, we haven't really been very kind to our planet or to our resources or to, you know, the people who are more vulnerable or the places that are more vulnerable than us. And I think what we need to learn from that is that, yes, COVID has happened and it's good that we're talking about post-COVID, but post-COVID, there will be something else. It's inevitable. I don't want to be the pessimist in this panel. It's not that I'm being pessimistic. It's just that, you know, the way we've been living our lives tells us that there will be something else coming up, whether economic, political, biological, whatever, pandemic, or, you know, call it what you want. Something else is going to come up. And that is the wake-up call, I think, that all of us have to include in, you know, building our cities and creating our companies and trying to sustain our companies or cities or whatever it is, however you want to see it, is that we need to look at the word resilience and try to build more resilient cities. And if you want to see it in a different way, so being a more resilient company. So in most of the discussions that that the gentlemen were having with you earlier. But the way I see it is I want to look at how we can build more resilient projects. So cities that are more self-sustained. So if for logistics are closed, or for whatever reason, you know, you're not allowed to go into the streets, or, you know, you can't have deliveries from X, Y, and Z anymore for whatever reason. How did we, you know, not wait and be reactive to these things, but initially the way we've designed, and we have information and we have the technologies on board and we know how to build better and smarter cities. So just be more proactive rather than reactive and build more resilient cities, I think. And that is the wake-up call that I think all of us need to start thinking about and looking for in the future. So for me, 2021 is a lot of questioning. Just like, I mean, it's a typical thing for me personally. I tend to question a lot of things, and I tend to question a lot of the value that we add. And I think that is what we will take forward into 2021, questioning projects, questioning whether we really need to sprawl our cities to these mega cities of, you know, business districts and schools as big as they, you know, with COVID, we've seen how we can somehow live without or differently than how we did for so many years. So is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? Can we be more responsible with our resources, with all of the things that we've been doing really irresponsibly? And I think the answers to all of these is yes. And I would urge everyone, to look at ways into how to take our 2021 and really work on these things. And, to answer some of the questions that you've been giving the gentlemen in the panel, I think, yes, maybe the number of projects will get less, but good projects are going to come up because, investors are going to want to spend their money on things that really would add value. And with that, we will need the really good consultants and the really good suppliers and the really good contractors who are going to be up to par to provide this, exceptional project that is going to be resilient and is going to keep bringing in money for the rest of, the project's timeline. So I think as companies, people need to really question the added value that they can provide to clients. Am I different? Am I providing a very different kind of service? Or am I, more of the same sort of, and that's how you would stand out in a tender. I know I talked about so many different things, but I felt the panel was going more towards, business sustainability and all of that. So I felt like this is from a client perspective.
I only have one thing to say.
Yeah.
Marwan Shakel, look out, because there is another voice in the PR department for Shuruk. And it's so good to have, that green connection to some of our design. And as I speak to a lot of architects and construction people and developing people, I mean, there is a strong movement that this is the wake-up call. We are building and designing buildings with more sustainable considerations. And so it is a very valid point. And it comes from an authority here in the UAE that I truly believe is very focused in this area. And so thank you so much for your comments. That was much appreciated. But still, as we face 2021, and it's clearly recognizable that there will be a little bit more pressure on our business as we move forward. I said earlier that there will be need for business management, business leaders to make tough decisions. And I'd like to hook over to Kamal from Batco. And we've discussed this before, but I'd love to hear you share your comments on this. In 2021, there will be winners and losers. That's for sure. There will be great companies that will continue to win, but there will be difficult times for others. And so what is Batco doing now to ensure that your company will be one of those winners in the future?
Well, hi, Philip. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I want to take just a couple of seconds to give you an idea of what Batco is a group. Batco does construction, and we do infrastructure, we do marine works, and we do specialty works. We do, for example, some crazy geotechnical things, tunnels, all these kind of heavy stuff. We do it. We have a waste management company, and that does all kinds of city collection, landfilling, recycling, waste to energy. We do these things. And we have also a company that does water treatment projects. We are a regional group. We are in the UAE, we are in Saudi, we are in Kuwait, in Oman, Lebanon, in Italy, and in Egypt. Okay. The different components of the group are not all doing as great as some, but as Philip said, would be sharing with you some of the things that we are doing here in the UAE. For example, on the practical side, I told Philip that it is exactly like when the man gets fat and he accumulates a lot of fat, and then he has bad eating habits, and it hits back. It's exactly what happened. Hopefully, we have tried to dodge the bullet. We have very swiftly restructured our business model in the UAE, extremely swift, without taking any time at all. We knew it was coming, we knew it was in store, and we immediately did it. The way we did it is that, for example, we had our business has a lot of labor, it's labor intensive. So now we have moved to a model which we have only retained the skilled people only, and we outsource the unskilled. So we go for rental, okay, for hired labor. I'm gonna tell you what I did here to save money. If I pay the people that hire me labor, regular labor, cash at the end of the month, I make an extraordinary saving. I save 1 dirham per hour on each labor for each hour. So I pay him cash immediately, no discussion about it. On diesel, because also we use a lot of equipment, heavy equipment, and we use a lot of diesel. We consume a lot of diesel. And you know, go figure that on the diesel price on the market, if you pay cash, you get at least about maybe 1.25 dirham per gallon deduction if you pay cash instead of paying, for example, in 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, whatever. So I pay cash and I get diesel cash and I save a lot of money. We also, as most of our colleagues, we have reduced a little bit of some of the salaries, but not a lot. To be honest, a lot of people did huge cuts. We did not. We did, but it was not huge. But our people understood. They all pitched in and they all share. But at the same time, everybody's saving. Not everybody is required to come to the office. Not everybody's using their phone and whatever, all these things. The third thing that we did, but we had it, but we did it much more attunedly and effectively, is that we work closely with our banks. And I myself didn't understand a lot of the issue of finance and banking, but now I've become a real math wizard, in all of these. So now I look at short-term liquidity. I look at solvency. I look at, leverage ratio. I look at payment plan, cash outlets. Whatever it is, I look at it. It was a very bad thing that I had to get involved in, but it seems that, as the people and the management of the company got really involved into this, so we know exactly what to pay for first so that the site never stops, so that this supplier always gets the money so that it doesn't stop us on site and this and that. We have improved our cash flow. We have improved our billing. I mean, I was surprised. I thought that we would be billing less on our sites. For some reason, we have billed more. And it seemed that because of the way the money was really directed toward the people that needed it and that they had absolutely in these COVID-19 times to provide the material and to provide whatever, the service. And mainly it was material that had to be driven as fast as possible. And I was able to pay him. And we got good bills. We're happy. Our banks are happy. And there's one thing that we know that it works for us, for our group. Okay, we've tried it many times, but the way it works for our group is that we work on project finance basis. We don't get, a lot of, general finance facilities. We tried it before, it was not good. So now any project that is not bankable, I just don't touch it. Don't touch it at all. Even if it's, red, blue, and orange, whatever it is, if it's not bankable, we don't touch it. So this is why we have a very healthy financial standing with our banks. Our leverage ratio is good, and we have a very good relationship with our banks. And the second chapter is that what we did, and we have done one project in Saudi Arabia now on this model. We were able to get long-term financing for 15 years, and we did a project on long-term financing for 15 years, and was good. And I had a proposal, the same proposal that was accepted to a client in Sharjah to give him a 13 years long-term project finance. We were able to do it with some financial, people helping us from overseas, Singapore and London, especially on infrastructure projects. They don't mind doing it on infrastructure projects for some reason, and it works. So I don't know, Philip, did I answer you? What did I answer?
Let me see. You're saying
something else.
Manage your cash and do whatever you can to reduce your costs, even if it means paying cash in advance.
You have to be
leverage your business successfully.
You have to be smart.
And don't be scared to look outside of the region to find good financiers to support your business and minimize your risk. Is that about it?
Yes, yeah, but you have to be street smart. Don't be on the level of, just looking from a top and this. You can save a lot of money on the nuts and the bolts. I told you on diesel, I never expected to save money on diesel and on labor. I mean, God. And I saved a lot of money, to be honest, and I'll save probably much more money on bitumen because I intend to buy bitumen now on cash basis. If you really think about these small things, you save money. What can I tell you?
So if you're a bitumen salesman, please give this guy a call. I'm sure you can today. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kamal, for your comments. It's very important. Now we have to make these hard decisions in business. And while we're hearing, a combination, I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? There is optimistic, positive view. There is pessimistic, negative view. I mean, you have to be careful. But like I said before, it's a process of reading the future, planning for the worst. Planning for the worst is just a matter of trying to understand what could be the worst case, but hope for the best. And in that process, we put in place some of these strategies that Kamil has been talking about to ensure the survival of our business. And that's what we're all here to do. These gentlemen, and we're here because they're business leaders. And if we can't learn from them something, then we won't have them on next time. But so far, we've heard great advice, good comments, something that we can learn. And it's really very much appreciated. Now, talking about positivity, I want to introduce you to a guy who I recently met. And I don't know how people survive working for this guy. He has just got so much energy. And I look forward to introducing now Mr. Atif Rahman, the director and partner of Danube Property. Atif, how you doing?
Hi, Philip. Thank you so much for that extra kind introduction.
I said to your marketing person the other day, how do you survive working for this guy? You must go home exhausted every afternoon.
Well, I think I'm blessed. I'm really blessed to have the people that are working for me. Like I've always maintained, God has been extremely kind, alhamdulillah. And I think I have the best set of people working for me. I think, going through some of the great comments from great veterans from the industry, Philip, when you look at any business, it's very simple, I think it's very important to stay away from optimistic or pessimistic view, and we need to maintain constantly a realistic view. That is very, very important. And when you see businesses suffering, more often than not, you would find that the businesses were planned to survive during an economic boom, and they had a deficit of strategy, they had deficit of cash flow, they had deficit of management for surviving during a crisis. Now, let me first of all, I was listening very carefully when you were opening the webinar today, and you were mentioning about the importance of decision making. And I think one of the key things which helps any business survive is the decision making, and more importantly, spontaneous decision making. That is very, very important. It's vital for any business. When you talk about crisis, I think economic boom is an equal crisis for any business. Look at the cost inflation you can get stuck with. I mean, I think I'm experiencing one of the best times, because I've told my tender and contracts department to roll out absolutely every tender that we hold, because it's one of the finest time to roll out the tenders and bring in the contractors. I am able to negotiate one of the best prices right now. the contractors who are willing to work on cost plus basis, you know. Now, when you look at the current situation, it's very simple. If I had planned my business to survive during boom, it will only survive during a boom. It did not have a strategy. Let's talk about resilience and sustainability and all the terms that we have developed. It's beautiful, it's great, but what is it? I think in business, I have believed what my grandfather taught me for construction and business. He told me, son, always remember, before technology and engineering, it's about common sense. And that's what we need to maintain at any given point of time, whether it's an economic boom or a recession. I mean, you know, in one of my interviews, I mentioned, was it raining dollars before the COVID? No. Any sensible business was eyeing an economic recession from end of 2018. The writing was on the wall. The markets were slipping down. Now, if I was not planned as a business, I would suffer. I would suffer. If I get carried away with the seasonal demands or the seasonal trends that are developed from this COVID, I'm weak as a business. I'm not strong as a business to have that resilience and sustainability because I'm driven by the market. When we talk about any business, for it to be sustainable, for it to be resilient, I need to have strong principles and strategies within the business. And that is what makes your business survive during the crisis. As I said, it is an economic crisis. I have 3 indicators for my business. Sales, whether I'm selling new inventory. Revenue, if people who have bought before are paying me. And third is the deliveries. How many projects, how many properties we are delivering. All 3 are higher than 2019. So what should I cry about? I mean, this year has been fantastic. If I see my year-on-year figures, I am looking at a positive growth in my sales, in my revenues, and in my deliveries. I did not have to fire anyone. I did not have to do any salary corrections, and I did not have to slash my prices because my assets, my inventories are aptly priced. So I did not have to roll out special offers or anything like that. We have not changed at all as a business. We have remained
a very positive, confident sound there. But I know Danube is a relatively young development company here in the UAE. I think you started in 2014. I understand that you've in this period of time have developed 14 major projects. I mean, you're very progressive and active. Aren't you a little bit concerned with some of the media we hear about an oversupply of housing in the UAE for this area of residential development?
Philip, see, 2 things. I'll talk about the oversupply and also very important matter that you had brought, that what are we going, it's good to be optimistic, but what are we looking at for the real estate and the construction industry in 2021 and 2022? When you talk about oversupply, I have maintained my stand on oversupply, that the risk of oversupply looms in any city across the globe. I mean, let me give you an example. We're talking about India, a country with 1.3 billion people. For God's sake, all you have is people over there, man. You know, look around, you see people, right? In a country with a 1.3 billion population, 2 metropolis, 2 of the main cities, the financial capital and the political capital, the country's capital city, Delhi and NCR. Mumbai, financial capital, is sitting with 170,000 ready homes, no taker. Delhi NCR is sitting with 200,000 ready homes, no taker. We are not talking about projects in pipeline. We're talking about ready homes. And we're talking about a country where you have a huge population drain coming into these metropolis. These are the 2 key cities where people come for business, for employment, for opportunities. And we have ready homes and there are no takers. So the risk of oversupply will remain in every particular city across the globe. It depends, it varies from city to city on various different factors. But there will never be oversupply of good properties. And that is when you see the market drifting from the average properties into a better property. So if you are a developer and you are developing a good property in a good location with a good design, with good amenities, you don't have to worry about oversupply. If you are an investor, you have bought into a property that is good in terms of value, you don't have to worry about it because people will move from average properties into better properties. People start upgrading during the economic recession. Now, when you look at good properties, let's understand the construction. It's a process. It's a multi-layered industry. It's not something I can class that only this is a good property. No, there are several good properties that can exist within a city. There has to be a conscious effort in every stage of the construction that has to be given. Like, for example, when I select the consultant, what is the general perception? This consultant is good or bad or average is based on the architecture. But I don't look at it that way. I want to know what kind of MEP design this consultant has done. I want to know what kind of structure they have developed. I want to know what kind of efficiencies they have developed in this project. I want to know what kind of reduction on carbon footprint they have delivered on this project. That becomes my parameter for selecting my consultant. When I am selecting the materials, when I am underwriting the factories, I want to know what kind of sustainable material we can develop. When I'm selecting my contractor, I need to be conscious of that the contractor is not over leveraged, is committed to my project and will be able to deliver the best possible quality in the quickest time. We are able to match that in a good location. We have implemented a good design, the asset will hold value. When you talk about the future, when you talk about 2021, 2022, I see a big concern. Why? Because I think we continue to talk and boast about the great infrastructure that we have created. I think we need to give up talking about the infrastructure, the hard and the soft infrastructure that has been created. That's history. It's already been done. Imagine if Dubai spent time 10 years ago or 20 years ago talking about its achievement that we have created Burj Al Arab. I don't think Dubai would have come this far. The reason why Dubai came this far and it was faster than any other city is because it was not talking about its accomplishments. It was talking about what more needs to be done. And I think we need to focus on creating more demand, and we need to look at liberalizing the banking sector. These two remain one of the key opportunities in the city.
Very good. Atif, thank you very much. I have many other questions for you, but we are pushing on our time a little bit, and I've got one more panelist that I need to get to, and then we're going to roll out to some questions. But I do want to come back to one point that you made in the beginning. You said it was a good time to develop because you can get a better price. Is that correct?
Yes.
Therefore, increased competition means lower price. As a developer, this is your expectation. And is this one of the reasons that will stimulate you as a developer to continue to develop through this period of economic recovery?
100%. See, if you as a developer, if you have a project which is financially sound, why should I stop developing? Or people are talking about oversupply, okay? If there is an oversupply in the market, which as I said, there will never be oversupply of good property. If consumers are still coming and buying from me, why should I stop developing? Why? Why should I stop developing? Because this is the finest time for me to sign contracts. I mean, I've just got one more tender left, maybe about 200 million dirham odd value that I need to roll out. Rest, I have rolled out several tenders over the last 1 year, and they all signed. The contractors are performing. They're more committed to deliver the project and deliver value at the site because they understand it's a risky market. And I have a financially sound project where there is no cash flow. It's great design, it's great location. They're more committed to deliver these projects. So I 100% agree. This is the best time to deliver because when you look at the market, I struggle when there is an economic boom, not when there is a recession. Because the first thing I encounter, as a developer, I have sold my property. My top line is locked. I can't change that. My bottom line is a certain expectation that I have. Everything in between is my cost. And when this cost experiences inflation, it compresses my bottom line. If it compresses my bottom line, I am compromised as a business. I lose ability to do good work. I lose ability, empowerment to deliver more projects, So it is one of the finest times to deliver projects, 100%.
Very good. Yeah, okay, fantastic. I told you he's a bit of a Powerball, this guy. He's very excitable. I mean, fancy working for Atif. You would go home exhausted, I think. Asif Shafi, nice for you to join us from ACOM. And thank you for just hanging in there to the very end as we work through this very interesting discussion. But so many of the other panelists have previously raised this, this question or this interest in seeing the construction industry move forward in this area of digitization. I mean, for some people who are associated to the contracting and design stage may really understand this. I mean, from the very start of the pandemic, I've been hearing this same message. Well, you know, the pandemic's going to force construction companies to move into this area of digitization. Well, I know that construction companies are already digitized. I'm not one of those guys that says the construction industry is not digitized, okay? Not 4.0. I believe that the construction industry is doing everything it can to be, you know, associated with improvement of digitization within their operations, but we are seeing so many new technologies that are developing, okay? Now, you and I discussed this, but my question to you is, are we really seeing construction companies move in this area, or is it just more talk?
Thank you, Philip. Really nice to join you all. It is a tough act following all of the distinguished panelists. Everyone has expressed a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to have to find some new ground to cover here. And I think following Atif is probably one of the toughest things to do today. But as a company, I just want to give you a quick introduction to AECOM, and then I'll delve into the particular question that you have posed to me, Philip. You know, AECOM, for those of you that don't know us, we're a global engineering company from the US. In the Middle East, we have about 4,000 people. We have had a presence in the UAE continuously since over 50 years. So we have a long-term commitment to the country. And similar to what others like Kareem have said, and Scott, I think I've spent over 20 years in the country myself and have seen the business cycles that we've been through. And have a lot of confidence in the country's ability to bounce back, you know, in the face of adversity, and the fact that you look at the leadership, and just in today's papers, there's a discussion about the next 50 years and consultation with the citizens and the residents, and that I see as being probably a real positive change in that the country is coming together with a long-term vision that includes more people than maybe it did in the past. So there's that sustainability that comes with that, with more people living here in the long term. And all of us who've lived here for over 20 years, 30 years, have those roots in the country. Now, when you think about the work that we've done as AECOM, over the past year, the Expo has been something that all of us in the construction industry have been focused on. We have been fortunate to deliver a lot of the infrastructure that is going to support the Expo, including all of the highways that surround the Expo site leading into it. We've done work to support the metro extension, and indeed on the Expo site itself, where we've developed all of the public realm. And now, while we are close to being ready, we have an additional year to maybe do some final touch-ups, but I think it's all for the better. They will be a year from now, and that will really, I think, position Dubai for the next phase of its growth. What we see for the next year, we have been, again, fortunate to have had commitments from clients that are more long-term in nature, multi-year contracts that we've been working on, such as the expansion at Abu Dhabi Airport. We are supporting the Etihad Rail expansion. That's another major infrastructure scheme that the country has invested in. And you can see that there is a pattern there that, yes, a lot of the infrastructure is already built, but we are continuing as a country to invest in and keep improving that. Because at the end of the day, that is sort of the foundation on which the economy is based. And as a business, we see that we will continue to see more investments in the future. There are projects like the deep sewer scheme for Dubai that is under discussion now. How that gets delivered in terms of more design and build, as has been referred to by others, the different financing options, PPPs, remains to be seen. We will see the metros being expanded. We will see more work being done on the airports. Yes, the timing of all of these will probably get maybe pushed out just a little bit. We as the engineering consulting industry are at the front end of it. And, you know, sometimes when there's a bit of a downturn, clients take a step back and they want to do more value engineering, more optioneering, trying to get more value from the investment that is being made. And so we, by nature of that, continue to remain engaged. I think our friends in the contracting industry tend to, you know, have to bear some of that pain of projects being delayed more than perhaps the engineering industry, the consulting industry. But from what we can see, there are a lot of projects in the pipeline, and as soon as, you know, the market conditions are right, those projects are going to be launched. There's a long-term view, and how things will change in the future, I think, is a function of the global changes we're seeing, with an emphasis on sustainability, on technology. You've mentioned digitization. So as a company, AECOM has tried to lead the way when it comes to the adoption of technology within the industry. The pandemic has simply accelerated some of those things. We've been traditionally a little slow to adopt technology as an industry, but I think now there is no choice for as a company and our competitors. Most of our people are working remotely, collaborating using cloud technology, working with colleagues globally and not just within the country. It no longer makes a difference whether someone is down the road from you or is located halfway across the world. It's more of a mindset change than really the availability of technology. It used to be that people were not comfortable until they met face to face and saw each other. And you know, just the nature of the conference that we're holding today, this is not something we would have even imagined a few months ago. But in addition to things like that, this is an opportunity to advance the thinking on smart cities, on BIM, on the use of drones, on the use of autonomous vehicles, and just connecting the cities. So the way that we look at it is the whole planning process for cities needs to now take that into account. We've got the opportunity to now participate in some, let's say, new developments within the region in Saudi Arabia, where you have more of a clean slate, a blank canvas on which to plan these. So that takes a different type of thinking. When you look at a mature city, what changes can you make in that city? That's slightly different. But there are opportunities in both places to improve the use of technology and really take it to the next level. I see you want to ask another question, so I'll stop there.
I just want to get to the main question. Is I've been hearing this for months. Are you seeing the construction industry adopt some of this technology? That's the question. Are you seeing it, or is it still just?
At least a couple of panelists have mentioned modular, and we are seeing that definitely. There are significant plans to move to modular construction, and we've developed a couple of projects in the UK that were delivered using modular technology, but they've been more, examples of what can be achieved. What has been lacking so far is a commitment from a major client to say, okay, I am going to, put forward an entire project that will be built. We're beginning to see that now. And especially when, you're looking at a remote location, when you have a client that wants construction to be complete in a much more accelerated schedule, there's the quality that comes with it, the repetition advantages, and bringing down the overall cost. So there's a lot of advantages there. And what we're trying to do is show that modular doesn't necessarily mean that it's a square block, ugly looking building. No, you can actually deliver really interesting concepts and designs, even if it's modular. So that's where we're trying to add value.
There's some very interesting sort of developments of that nature in Saudi Arabia. I'm not seeing so much here in the UAE, but very interesting points. So thank you very much. Well, panel, we really appreciate your contribution to today's webinar. And we did say that we try and finish by 3:30. And so we have so many questions from the audience today. I just want to grab a few of them. I must say that there's a lot of complimentary remarks to all of your presentations or discussion points today. There's a lot of people asking for jobs, and a tremendous amount of support from the green community for Halawa's comments on what the future for sustainability in construction means to her. And so really wonderful appreciation from everyone that's joined us today. But we do have a couple of questions, and I'm simply just going to throw this question out there. I don't care who answers it. And if you guys just want to continue discussing a question amongst yourself, then please go ahead. But the first question that I have from our panel is, how have companies navigated their COVID-19 response? And are we ready or insulated if there is a significant downturn in 2021? Okay, so what have you done about insulating your business against COVID-19? And what do you plan to do if there is a significant downturn in 2021?
I'm happy to start the response quickly with two things. Number one, we're never going back to our office the way we ever did before. We're actually in the process of looking to move office now, and our new office will be 40% of the size of our old office, and the rest of our business will continue to work remotely. The other thing that we've recognised is your location now actually is irrelevant in terms of who your clients are. And this is both a risk and an opportunity for the region. We as consultants can now just as easily work for somebody in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Asia or the Middle East, as we can work with our local clients by being based in Dubai because of technology like this, which has gone from being the exception to the rule, which means that a business based in the Middle East can now compete with anybody in any geographic location around it. So the playing field is now much larger. So even if there is less action on the playing field has literally gone from local to global, and we all need to take up that challenge.
Interesting answer. Just a quick injection here. If every company reduced their office size by 40%, doesn't this affect the construction industry? There will be less buildings to build, more space available.
I think just to add to that previous question, Philip, how are we going to manage the business? It's very simple. I'm old school. I've been doing construction for 20 years. I learned it from my grandfather and my father. I believe in that. You can have you need to have conscious innovation in construction industry. We still rely on conventional and PV slab. That's how the industry is. It impacts people's life. Manage your cash flow. And sorry to say this, but if the business is ill managed or in bad health, it's too late. And if the recession continues, it will be impacted. That is a fact. We have to accept it because there's nothing you can do. If the economic downturn continues, nothing you can do. You know, when you talk about sorry, Philip, you had another question on.
That's okay. Keep going. I'm just getting ready for the next one, but keep going, please. Yes, good point.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, if you are a business, you are already impacted. There's nothing you can do. It's already inflicted in the business, and there's not much you can do. If you're not principally strong, strategically strong as a business, you'd continue to suffer. And it is too late for any action, any recovery right now, because if the economic downturn continues, which in my opinion is here to stay, we should prepare for at least a couple of years of economic downturn. We should start looking at innovative ideas of creating new demand, bringing in more liquidity, liberalizing the market, and creating more, like what Asif said, you know, one of the key points which we miss out in this region is public-private partnership. I mean, it's absolutely zero, it's null. And I think we need to look at these opportunities which will enhance the opportunities for the future. Right now, as we stand, we need to continue to follow the basics. That is where the strength of the business is. And manage your cash flow. That's a single answer. Yes, if we continue to remodel the business, we rely on technology, we affect the industry. You know, so we should not, as a business, I hate to follow any seasonal trend. A seasonal trend is temporary and will impact my business. Like for example, I have a friend of mine, he got carried away, he bought 1 container of mask, right? By the time it arrived at the port, the prices fell down. So to compensate, he ordered another container of masks. Okay, by the time second one came in, he wanted to capitalize. He ordered 2 more to average out the prices. He's sitting with 4 containers of masks and accounted loss of 6.5 million. Do not follow seasonal trends. Do not follow seasonal trends.
We can only agree. I have another question.
Phil, just before, if you allow me to comment on
please go ahead. Yes.
Question on office buildings. I mean, there is a potential to transfer all these office buildings in the cities to residential, because there are a lot of people travel. This will, cut the travel time for the people who live in the city. And there is this in new projects.
So so what you're saying, it's a reverse. Instead of working from home, we can live in the office.
No, they transferred the office buildings into residential buildings.
Okay, all right, very good. Good point. That is a very good point. I think that we see that a lot in many of the Asian countries where they either build residential or commercial. It's a choice. It's just the difference of a fit out. I have one question here. If everything is okay, and it seems that your panel, that's you guys, seem very positive about the future, why is it then that most people I know still have their salaries cut? Is this going to just be the new normal?
Actually, I think you'll see that salaries are starting to come back up. I mean, I heard now that Emirates, they've increased their salaries. Yes, there are some companies that are still cutting their salaries, but I think it has a lot to do also with the cash flow in the market and the payments that are coming through. I think those need to improve in order to help the companies then pass it down the chain, both to their employees as well as the subcontractors and the supply chain. So I don't think it will last much longer. You can already see some of the big companies are starting to give the salaries back.
See, Philip, my take is that it's a testing time, and you want to stay strong as a company. And by slashing the salaries, you're weakening yourself. Your core infrastructure, your core asset is your employees, and you are weakening yourself in testing time. So as a business, I think first thing any business should look at is empower your employees, support them well. They will empower the business. Unfortunately, we try to look for profit instead of value. We look for value, we get the profit. You look after the employees, they drive your business forward. Unfortunately, that is not the default norm that is followed, but fortunately, that is what works eventually.
I think if I can maybe just comment very quickly on that as well. I agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of businesses in Dubai that operate on a very, very much kind of a hand-to-mouth model, and they need this kind of income monthly in order to pay salaries. That's very worrying. And I think there are a lot of businesses, let's be honest, that are struggling at the moment. Perhaps you have a panel here of relatively optimistic sort of business leadership, but there are businesses that are struggling that are operating hand to mouth. I think the best thing that can happen is rather than these businesses starting to try and cut costs, but not sort of radically sort of change or develop their product or look at what they're doing with their product, these companies need to disappear now and realize, that they're not going to be around in the long term, and they need to accept it, cut their losses, and stop lingering around, stop delaying the inevitable. And for me, I think that's part of the problem, and that's probably the companies where they are still implementing these salary reductions.
So you think they're on the list of the losers, on the loser side?
I think
there are winners and there are losers, and some of these bad companies should be the losers.
I think that most definitely. I mean, there's a lot of companies that right now you need to be in a very strong cash position. You need to be cash rich, cash strong. That's the way you'll see yourself through this. You need to hold reserves, and you need to be able to have a very, very strong transformational business plan to move forwards. There are a number of businesses that aren't doing that. They're still selling the same product, but doing it cheaper, and to try and keep afloat in the short term. But long term, they're sinking, and I think they need to accept that.
No, 100%. I think what Scott's saying is 100% true. It's a correction now for the market. You had a lot of cowboys that came in, they wanted to make a quick buck in the country and then get out, take their money with them. And now is a correction time so that you're left with it's survival of the fittest. You're left with the most efficient companies that give back the best quality and have the repeat business come back to them. You also need to have good support from the banks. which again comes down to your reputation in the market. The banks will only support those who they feel comfortable, who have had a long relationship with the country. I mean, this is what we're finding. We're having banks that are coming and supporting us, which is definitely helping us in this time when cash flow is quite low and the payments are being very, very slow. You're having to go and have that relationship with the bank to support you.
So, it's an uphill climb. Not everyone will be able to climb the mountain right now. That's a fact, and as Scott and Kareem said. But Kareem, I think, we need to look at the central bank liberalizing the banking sector. It can further help the market. I don't need liquidity. Maybe you don't need liquidity, but there are businesses who can survive if they're supported with a little bit of stimulus package at this point of time. And ultimately it will roll back in the economy. It's a chain, and if it is liberalized, I think as a business community, if we highlight the opportunities and the gaps that exist in the market, it will further strengthen the economy and it will reflect back in the banking sector and the businesses. Banking sector, I feel, needs to liberalize a little bit more for the entire region and the country and the city to come back into a performing situation.
As if though, if a developer is saying at this time I will develop, but I know I'm going to get the lowest price, somebody has to pay. If a developer is saying I'm going to develop because I know I can get a contractor at the lowest price, and then contractors have to lower their price. Where do they get that lower price from? Are they moving forward with construction contracts at variable cost? Are they expecting not to make money but just have a project in hand for the next year or so? How does it continue to survive if it's a continual spiral downwards?
See,
any comments?
Philip, you're right. The way people are trying to lower down the costs is by cutting down on the margins, and that is not good for the economy. I 100% agree with you. But unfortunately, I have not met a single contractor till date who has been able to sit on the table and work through the mechanism of value engineering, economies of scale, modular design. These are principles of the business that I have followed the day I started this business from. And it has helped me. It has helped me we talk about modular design, like I think I forgot who had mentioned that modular design doesn't necessarily needs to be ugly. But yeah, look at my projects. They are decently attractive and they're all modular design. It helps me save costs because my factories are working on a default model. My economies of scale, my value engineering all contribute. Unfortunately, that expertise does not exist in the market, and contractors go with, I'll give you an example. I was sat with my tender and contracts department day before yesterday, and I said, why should we not look at the prelims? It's a sizable amount of cost. Kareem can throw in more light on this. He's from the consultancy as well as the contracting side. Why should we ignore the prelims? Why can't we lower down the cost in terms of the side expenses, manage it more efficiently, save some cost? End of the day, the more we develop, every square feet will become more and more costlier. So we need to deliver more value in less square feet, more space in less square feet. We need to deliver more value for the consumer. End of the day, we can all fight and try to earn our bit of profit, but it will only survive if the consumer is benefiting. Consumer is benefiting if we are delivering the right value at the right price. And for that, I think we need to create coalition between the consultants, the contractors, and the developers, where all three are working together to achieve the best value at the optimum price, and ensure that affordability of the market is maintained.
So you're saying a lower price doesn't really mean a lower profitability. What you're saying is that in the construction sector, we need to find ways to be more efficient, to optimize our lower costs, but improve our profitability at the same time?
Yeah.
There is another question that I had, and I'm going to leave with this question because we're running over our planned time. But there was some question that I saw with regard to the vertical integration of the construction process. Are we seeing the construction industry move in this direction? Instead of outsourcing MEP, is it that the contractor might be a step? We're seeing changes where the contractor will set up his or establish his own MEP operations. Is this something that is moving forward in the industry?
Well, I mean, from our perspective, like I said, you know, we started off with the construction company, ECC, that was started in 1975. The next company we set up after that was the joinery, which was Abanos, and has grown now to be one of the best joinery factories in the region and one of the largest factories. We've then gone and set up our own MEP company, United Masters, which was set up in the early 90s. So yes, other companies have done the same. I mean, after that, we went and set up our metal and aluminium factory. But, you know, outside of that, I don't think it's just about setting up your own in-house company. I think it's very much about also going and setting up strategic partnerships with other subcontractors. So you don't necessarily have to invest the money and set up your own company. Rather, you start building relationships with these outside subcontractors. And even though we have our own in-house sister companies, we always try to have this balance where we do give work to special partners that we have in the market. So we don't just stick with our own MEP company. We'll go to one or two other MEP companies that we feel very, very comfortable with.
Very good point. Very good point. I like that point about partnership, developing that strategic partnership. And I guess this speaks volumes about the efficient ways that we manage our business and the efficient ways that we need to move forward in the development of managing our business, especially as we move from this time of crisis to a time of recovery. I think the whole point of discussion today was that there is no one answer for anyone, because we are entering a time that may be uncertain. We don't know what the future holds, but as we continue to, you know, lean on our experience, to listen to the voice of wisdom, to look forward and plan our businesses accordingly, to do what we can to understand the market read, then this will contribute to our greatest success as players within this wonderful construction industry space. Well, gentlemen and Halawa, I really appreciate your support to be on our panel today. Your voices have been very well heard, and I can see from the comments, very much appreciated. So we do thank you for joining us. We thank you for being a part of our webinar, and we look forward to having you back on again in the future, some webinar. I think I could spend an entire 1 hour session with each of you individually. So I think I've got the next 5 or 6 webinars lined out already. So really appreciate your support and commitment to the industry. Let's keep building a great future. And I know that this truly is your heart. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for hanging in for such a longer period of time. But I'm sure you'll agree that this has been a really outstanding discussion about the future of construction here in the UAE. Well, we look forward to catching up with you next time on our next webinar. And we just want to say thank you so much for contributing and being a part of this great event today. Thank you very much and have a lovely afternoon. Take care.